Our town is going to build an airport. Relocation team people went door to door measuring houses, negotiating compensation, but I waited 3 months. No one ever knocked on my door. Only later did I find out. On the planning map, my family's land had been deliberately left out of the red line. So I got angry. I went to the town government. The answer I got was that the plan was set. No way around it. My neighbors saw this and mocked me. Well, that's it. Stay stuck in your rundown house for life. I didn't say a word. Instead, I took out all the savings I'd built up over half my life, and took out a loan. Scraped together 10 million. 6 months later, the old house turned into a 10-story building. I put up a sign that read Cloud Hotel. The notice at the entrance, no entry for non-guests, became the most eye-catching sight in the entire airport area. As soon as the news of building an airport spread, our place called Peaceville could never be peaceful again. All of a sudden, compensation money, resettlement apartments, the future new life became the town's eternal topic. White vans printed with relocation office logos, shuttled back and forth on the town's dirt roads. Workers carrying tape measures and notebooks went door to door measuring, registering, and negotiating. My father's house stood at the easternmost edge of town, a 2-story old building with some age. After my parents passed away early, I was the only one living here. On the first day, the relocation van drove past my door without stopping. I figured they started measuring from the west end. My turn hadn't come yet. The first week, neighbor Aunt Lee's family reached an agreement. Word was they got a nice chunk of money. She couldn't stop smiling. Every time she saw me, she'd ask loudly, "Aching, your family must be next, right?" I just nod and smile in reply. The first month, households in the eastern part also started signing one after another. Soon, red demolish characters appeared on every wall in town. Only my wall remained gray and dusty, very clean. My heart began to pound with anxiety. Another 2 months passed. Most families in the town had already moved away. Seeing this, a sense of dread spread through my heart. So I went to the town government. I found the town mayor, Zhang Daxian. He was busy on the phone. When he saw me push the door open, he just lifted his eyelids impatiently. "What is it?" I stepped forward and asked, "Mayor Zhang, I want to ask about the airport demolition. Why isn't our house included?" Zhang Daxian. Hearing this, he slowly put down the phone. He pulled a huge planning map out of his drawer. Pointing at it, he said, "See for yourself." I leaned in to look, and my heart sank heavily. The red demolition line on the planning map was like a sharp blade, cutting tightly along the edge of my house's wall. And my little building, like a forgotten island, was left isolated outside the red line. I stared hard at that red line, my voice trembling slightly. "How is this possible? Is there a mistake?" Zhang Daxian's tone was icy, without a trace of warmth. "There's no mistake. That's how the plan was decided. There's nothing we can do about it." I couldn't help pressing further. "But why is the whole town being demolished? Why is our house the only one left out?" Zhang Daxian's voice suddenly rose, carrying the unquestionable authority of an official. "I told you, this was the expert's decision in the planning. What can I do about it? All right, I have a meeting. You should go back." With that, he walked straight out of the office. As soon as I stepped into my home, I ran straight into Aunt Lee, who was directing the movers, as they loaded furniture piece by piece onto the truck. When she saw how lost I looked, a gloating smile crept across her face. She spoke up and asked, "Aching went to ask?" I didn't say anything. Seeing me silent, he pursed his lips. "I told you so. Your house's location is tricky. They're building an airport, and your house is right on the edge. It doesn't block anything, but demolishing it would mean compensation. Money. That's not cost-effective." Just then, another neighbor leaned in and sneered, "Well, from now on, you'll be the only one in the whole town stuck in that rundown house for the rest of your life, surrounded by the airport. The noise will drive you crazy." Aunt Lee laughed even louder, chiming in, "You said it. While the rest of us move into new apartments in the city, Aching will still be breathing airplane exhaust." Those harsh laughs pierced my ears like needles. But I didn't argue with them. I just slowly raised my head, gazing quietly at the small building that had grown up with me. In the end, the moving truck rumbled away. I stood on the empty street, pulled out my phone and dialed. "Hello, Suwan? It's me, fucking." A gentle female voice came through the phone. She asked, puzzled, "Aching, why did you suddenly think to call me?" I hesitated for a moment, then said, "I wanted to ask you about a loan. Suwan and I grew up together as childhood friends. She studied finance in college, and now works as a client manager at a bank in the city." Suwan asked, surprised, "A loan? Aching, what happened?" I replied calmly, "Nothing. I want to renovate my family's old house." Suwan grew even more confused, pressing, "Renovate? I heard your town is building an airport. Everyone is supposed to be relocated, right?" I briefly explained the situation. "My house isn't within the demolition zone. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Su-won's voice carried a hint of anger. Isn't that bullying? How could the planning map be so coincidental? It just happens to bypass your whole family. I said calmly. Whether it's a coincidence or not no longer matters. Su-won pressed on. Then what do you plan to do? Just hold on to that old house? I looked out at the empty land and answered word by word, no, I'm gonna tear it down and rebuild. After hearing this, Su-won was silent for a long time before saying, Aching, have you thought it through? This is no small amount of money. I replied firmly, I have. How much do you need? I have 200,000 in savings, left by my parents, and saved from working these years. I want to borrow another 300,000. That makes 500,000 in total. Hearing that number, Su-won on the other end of the line gasped sharply. 500,000? Aching, are you crazy? You're just rebuilding a home for yourself. How could it cost that much? What I'm building isn't an ordinary house. My eyes fixed on the massive outline of the future airport in the distance. That place will be bustling with people, endless business travelers, and my house is the closest to the airport, and will be the only private building there. I asked Su-won, what do you think about opening a hotel right next to the new airport? What's the outlook? Hearing this, Su-won stood frozen in place. She has always been sharp, and instantly understood my intention. She exclaimed, a hotel? You want to open a hotel? Aching, you're taking too big a step. Do you know how to run it? Do you have any connections? The risk is too high. Facing his worry, I asked him back, the risk is huge. We're holding onto a worthless old house, waiting for it to slowly rot in the noise of planes. Which is scarier? After hearing my words, Su-won, with a face full of worry, spoke up. But 300,000 is not a small amount. Using your old house as collateral, the valuation might not be enough, and there's no proof of income. Before she could finish, I interrupted her. I know, that's why I came to you. You're a professional. Help me see if there's any way. Actually, I know I'm putting her in a tough spot, but I have no other path left, because this is the only chance I have to change my fate. Su-won let out a long sigh and said, Aching, you're still the same as before. When you don't speak, it's fine. But once you open your mouth, you scare people to death. How about this? Bring your property deed and documents to my office tomorrow. I'll help you sort things out and see what channels we can use. I can't guarantee anything, but I'll do my best. I said gratefully, thank you, to lighten the mood. Su-won cracked a joke. Don't thank me yet. Once your hotel is up and running, just save me a lifetime free presidential suite. To that, I replied very seriously. Deal. So the next day at dawn, I squeezed onto the first bus to the city, carrying all my hopes. As soon as we met, Su-won started marking up my documents, made countless phone calls, took me to several different offices. The bank's review staff, when they saw my property deed marked outside the red line, all had expressions of utter disbelief in their eyes. Lending to an island surrounded by an airport was far too risky, so I explained my business plan over and over again. But when they looked at me, this silent, even somewhat introverted young man, their eyes were full of doubt. During that time, there were many moments when I felt I couldn't go on. Fortunately, Su-won kept encouraging me by my side. She not only helped me perfect my business plan, but also taught me step by step how to communicate with the bank staff. She even used her own connections to take the branch manager out for a meal. A week later, just when I was nearly at the point of despair, Su-won called me. Her voice on the other end of the line was tinged with exhaustion, but even more so with excitement. Aching, it's been approved. Hearing that, I couldn't help asking excitedly, really? She said excitedly, really? 300,000 yuan, funds released within a week. I made a pledge with our bank manager and pushed your project as this year's key initiative, an innovative pilot project. Before I managed to convince him, I held the phone, unable to speak for a long time. Tears welled up without warning. I said gratefully, Su-won, thank you. Su-won laughed and replied, silly, what are you thanking me for? I then promised, once I get the money, I'll treat you to a meal. But Su-won laughed and said, no need for a meal. Just get your hotel built quickly. I'm waiting to stay in the presidential suite. After hanging up, I walked to the window and looked out at the massive airport construction site that had already begun. A week later, my phone received a text message. Your account has been credited with 300,000 yuan. Staring at that long string of zeros, I couldn't help but take a deep breath. A total of 500,000. This was not only my entire life savings, but also my entire gamble. I said to myself in my heart, Father, you have no way back. I answered firmly, only win, cannot lose. The day after getting the money, I immediately contacted the best architectural design firm in the city, hired the most famous construction team in the town. The foreman of the construction team was surnamed Zhao. He was a straightforward man. Seeing my family's old house, he couldn't help scratching his head. Aching, Are you really going to demolish this house? Rebuild, you say? Foreman Zhao then asked. Started? What do you plan to build it into? Let me tell you, this area in the future will all be airport. Building an ordinary house here won't be comfortable to live in. I then took out a blueprint and said, Uncle Zhao, don't worry. The blueprint has already been designed by someone I hired. After Foreman Zhao took the blueprint, he only glanced at it, and his eyes widened. Oh my goodness! For floors, plus a basement and a viewing terrace? Are you planning to build a small Western-style house? Hearing this, I calmly replied, not a Western-style house. It's a hotel. Foreman Zhao immediately said in shock. Foreman Zhao and the workers behind him were stunned. The expressions on their faces were exactly the same as the bank staff earlier. Foreman Zhao couldn't help but ask doubtfully, Aching, are you joking? In this place with no village ahead, and no fields behind, opening a hotel? I pointed at the dusty airport construction site in the distance and said, in the future, this place will not be with no village ahead, and no fields behind. Look, that place will become the liveliest spot in Anning Town. Foreman Zhao looked at my determined eyes and fell silent. Then he stared at the blueprint for a long time, then looked up at the location of my house, and his expression gradually changed. Then he slapped his thigh and said with sudden realization, I understand. Aching, you've got a sharp mind there. This is what you call seizing the opportunity. Captain Zhao exclaimed excitedly, continuing, everyone else thinks this is a dead end for you. But if you actually build that hotel, it'll become a gold mine. People coming off the plane are tired and worn out. Who wouldn't want to find a place to rest as soon as possible? Your hotel is the first thing they see when they open their eyes, isn't it? I was a bit surprised. Uncle Zhao understood my idea so quickly. So I asked, Uncle Zhao, are you willing to take on this job? Uncle Zhao immediately thumped his chest with a loud bang. He agreed readily. Why wouldn't he take on such an interesting job? You couldn't find one like this even with a lantern. Don't worry. However the blueprints are drawn, I'll build it exactly that way. I guarantee I'll make it look great, solid and sturdy. The bulldozer rolled into the yard. That day made a huge commotion. Some neighbors who hadn't moved yet came over to watch the excitement. When they saw the shack that housed my childhood memories collapse with a crash under the bulldozer's iron arm, they couldn't help but cry out in shock. This couple has really lost their minds. They tore down a perfectly good house just like that. What does he think he's doing? I heard he brought a lot of money. He's going to build a fancy Western-style house here. Aunt Lee, seeing this, crossed her arms and sneered. Build a fancy house? I think he has too much money, and nowhere to spend it. Once it's built, he'll be living alone in such a big house. Aren't you afraid at night? The people nearby chimed in. Exactly, there's not even a neighbor around. It's like living in a graveyard. I think he's just trying to save face, making himself suffer for it. Going against the planning like this, does he think he'll get any good out of it? I turned a deaf ear to all the gossip, just standing in front of a patch of rubble and debris. After watching the workers for a short while, the commotion alerted the town mayor, Zhang Daxian. He sat in his car, rolling down the window, watching him from a distance. Probably never expected that instead of coming to him crying and begging, he had stirred up such a big fuss. Then Zhang Daxian shouted fucking through the car window. I walked over and asked, something wrong? His tone carried accusation. What are you doing? Renovating the house. He pressed on with his questioning. Do you need to knock down the entire house for a renovation? This is rebuilding. Did you get the approval paperwork? I did, Zhang Daxian. He hadn't expected me to have all the procedures done so thoroughly. His face turned ugly. He tossed the documents back to me, his voice laced with threat. I'm warning you, don't do anything reckless. The airport construction is a major project. If you dare to obstruct construction or build illegally, don't blame me for being unkind. I carefully put the documents away, looking him straight in the eye. Don't worry, everything I do is within the bounds of the law and regulations. I won't hinder anyone, and I ask that no one hinders me from making big money. He had probably never seen such a tough attitude from me. In the end, he gave a heavy snort, rolled up the window and sped off. I knew he came today to warn me, and also to test me. In the days that followed, I practically lived at the construction site. Soon, the framework of the building rose from the empty land, growing upward visibly day by day. In the first month, the foundation and basement were finished. In the second, the main structure was topped out. Finally, when the last truckload of concrete was poured on the fourth-floor roof, Uncle Zhao set off a string of firecrackers in excitement. I stood on the freshly formed bare rooftop, looking down at the land beneath my feet. Looking around, the outline of the distant airport is becoming clearer day by day. My hotel and the future airport seem to be engaged in a silent competition to see who can appear before the world faster. Just on this day, I was discussing the exterior wall materials with the designer at the construction site. A convoy of law enforcement vehicles roared up. The doors opened and out came more than a dozen people in uniforms from different departments. The leader was a middle-aged man, and Zheng Daxian followed behind him, a faint, barely noticeable sneer on his face. The middle-aged man sternly demanded who was in charge here. I stepped forward and said I am. He waved his credentials in front of me, said we are a joint law enforcement team, having received a citizen's complaint that there is serious illegal construction here, major safety hazards, and environmental pollution. My heart sank when I heard this. I knew trouble was coming. Zheng Daxian stood by without speaking, but his gloating eyes said it all. Facing them, I replied calmly, all our procedures are legal, and the construction fully complies with national standards. Whether it's legal or not is not up to you to decide. Check it thoroughly. Don't miss a single corner. The people behind him immediately scattered, flooding into my construction site. Some inspected fire safety. Some measured noise levels. Some took air samples. Some flipped through our construction logs. The foremen and workers were dumbfounded. They wanted to step forward and argue, but I stopped them, let them check, because I knew in my heart, this was Zheng Daxian's revenge. The more times like this, the more I cannot panic. The entire afternoon, my site was in a state of standstill, during which various harassments came one after another. The rebar spacing here seems off. Get a measuring tape. Your dust control measures are inadequate. We're going to issue a fine. Where's the canteen's hygiene permit? Take it out. Let me see. Zheng Daxian kept leaning in to whisper something into the middle-aged man's ear. Then they both cast towards me a malicious gaze, and I remained silent throughout, only using my phone to clearly record their every move, and each person's face, until the sun was about to set. They had almost turned the entire construction site upside down. Finally, they gathered together, with the middle-aged man making a summary. After our detailed inspection all afternoon, your construction site basically meets the standards. Clearly, he was very reluctant to say those words. My heart finally settled down, because I knew, from the moment I decided to build the hotel, I had perfected every single detail. I hired the best supervision company. I required a certificate of quality for every batch of building materials. Every construction step strictly followed the blueprints. My goal was to build a building that no one could find any fault with. Zheng Daxian's face turned very ugly. Clearly, he hadn't expected that someone in his 20s like me could be so flawless in his actions. Then the middle-aged man changed his tone. But considering that your construction site is right next to the airport, the key project is a special case. To ensure nothing goes wrong, we have decided to order you to stop work for a week for rectification and conduct a comprehensive self-inspection. Uncle Zhao was the first to shout uncontrollably. On what grounds? We have no problems at all. Why should we stop work? Immediately, the middle-aged man put on a stern face and said, "This is an order. If you refuse to comply, we will revoke your construction permit." However, looking at his greasy and arrogant face, I suddenly smiled. Station Master Zheng, I have the phone numbers of all the leaders from the Municipal Housing and Urban Rural Construction Bureau, the Fire Department, and the Environmental Protection Bureau. I also just sent the video I recorded to a friend of mine. He works for the provincial media. What if I told them exactly what happened this afternoon? How would they react? I'm just an ordinary person trying to protect my home. No power, no influence. This clumsy method is all I have left to defend myself. Hearing this, the smile instantly froze on his face. He stared at me in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. He probably never dreamed that I, an orphan he saw as weak and easy to bully, would still have such a card up my sleeve. At that moment, the middle-aged man also sensed the tension. He hurried over and asked Town Mayor Zheng, "Look at this." Zheng Daxian shot me a vicious glare and said through gritted teeth, "Let him keep building." With that, he got into his car without looking back and fled in disgrace with that so-called enforcement team. A cheer erupted on the construction site. The party secretary and the workers all gave me a thumbs up, praising me, "Aching, you're awesome." But only I knew. What I just said was half true, half false. I did record a video, but the media friend was something I made up. I was gambling, betting that Zheng Daxian was guilty and wouldn't dare to stir up more trouble. I won that bet, but I also knew he wouldn't let it go. So I looked at the city lights in the distance and took out my phone. "Hello, Su-Wan?" After Su-Wan listened to me recount what happened this afternoon, she was silent for a long time, so I tentatively asked, "Hello, Su-Wan, are you still there?" Her voice sounded tired, but also very calm. "Aching, don't panic yet." I replied, "I'm not panicking. I just want to know what I should do next." Su-Wan analyzed on the other end. "If you fight him head-on on his turf, you'll definitely come out worse. We need a different approach." I immediately pressed, "What approach?" "The art of war says, in battle, engage with the orthodox and win with the unconventional." You have all the necessary procedures now. Legal and compliant. This is why Zheng Daxian makes big money. He wants to find fault with you but can't. So he has